Wano is an arc about death. That is not the only theme, but it seems like it has the potential to be the most interesting and nuanced theme of the arc by the time it is over. I think many don't realize this, but Kaido was introduced with a chapter called Suicide, and the very first chapter of Wano itself deliberately mirrors this, titled Seppuku. No mistake, this storyline is very clearly framed around the idea of death. Now, a disclaimer here, this is not to say that a lot of characters have to die in Wano, or that characters are going to die in Wano. After all, we had Usopp's speech about preserving your life, which will be discussed later in this video. Rather, the point is that death is a central theme in Wano in many ways that I do not see discussed, and specifically Wano seems to be tackling a new message surrounding the idea of death that past arcs have provided the foundation for. We will get into these two chapters, Suicide and Seppuku, soon, but first we need to take a quick look at three ideas that Oda has built up around the theme of death in One Piece in the story so far. And before we get into it, make sure to subscribe for more One Piece videos every week. So I've discussed this in past videos, but there are three main recurring ideas throughout One Piece regarding death. First is, of course, how a man dies only when he is forgotten. This is the idea that your spirit can essentially continue to live on after your death if your will is passed down to others. Essentially, the theme of death tied into inherited will. The same way that Chopper inherits Hiruluk's will, and really the whole Drum Kingdom continues to grow thanks to the memory of Hiruluk, so too do we see countless characters throughout One Piece who are carrying on the wills of those important to them, those who will never be forgotten. Second is the type of legacy that is left behind thanks to the way that you die. So not just the notion of not being forgotten, but specifically how the manner in which you die can in itself leave an impact. This is in fact the foundation of literally the entire narrative of One Piece, starting from chapter 1. Everything we are reading is built off the back of one great man's death. The way he chose to die was very explicitly what created this entire era that the main characters are living in today. Same thing with Whitebeard. The way he died left an impact that ensured that Roger's will would continue to carry on. And of course, the cornerstone of this entire Wano conflict was Oden's death, and specifically the way in which he died, the legacy that this manner of death left behind. Kaido himself acknowledging that the way that Oden died ensured that people would be talking about him forever, which is precisely why so many continue to fight against Kaido today. And the final message regarding death, woven throughout One Piece, is how the ability to choose your own death defines the type of person you are. In the One Piece world, it is a mark of strength, of greatness, to be able to choose how you die. This idea is universal. It does not matter if you're a good guy, a bad guy, a hero, a villain. The weak do not get to choose how they die. Law says this, Doflamingo says this, and even Luffy is adamant that he will get to choose exactly how and where he dies. So, the three recurring ideas on death throughout the narrative of One Piece. You only truly die when you are forgotten, how you die can have a great impact, and finally, only the strong are capable of choosing how they die. So you can see throughout the narrative, death is essentially romanticized in many ways. And all of that finally brings us to Wano, which seems to be taking all of this messaging to its somewhat logical conclusion and tackling the idea behind the honor of death. Now, to be clear, I do not think that Oda's complete message around this theme can be understood till the end of the arc. However, I want to break down the ideas that we have been getting so far, since there are actually a lot of differing, even contrasting ideas to discuss here, which makes the final message even more interesting to think about. So first we have to look at similarities between how Kaido and the people of Wano both seem to think, going back to the chapters I previously mentioned, Suicide and Seppuku. In the chapter Suicide, our introduction to Kaido, from what we can infer, he wants a proper way to die. That is why he is jealous of Whitebeard, who, as we know, died in a legendary manner that left a tremendous legacy behind. In Seppuku, our introduction to Wano and the samurai way, we also learn that the samurai believe that a samurai's true worth is in their death. From here on, these sorts of sentiments are echoed throughout the arc, both from Kaido and from the samurai. Kaido agrees with the notion that death is what completes a person. He continually reiterates the importance of facing one's death like a warrior. In the same vein, the Scabbards repeatedly make clear that they are prepared to give their lives in this battle. In fact, they want to give their lives in this battle. They feel that this is the way that things should be. And it's not just the Scabbards. All of Wano's culture reinforces this notion, with the custom of Sunacchi being so prominent. The whole idea is that you can't give too much value to your life. You have to be prepared to throw it all away and take a risk, essentially the ultimate rallying cry for a warrior going into battle. The essence of a warrior, of a samurai, is in the honor of their death. It's as though so many of the ideas throughout One Piece, ideas that we have already come to accept and romanticize, are taken perhaps a bit too far and twisted in Wano. Yes, the will that you leave behind after death is important. Dying in a manner that leaves an impact can be very noble, and it does say a lot about one's greatness to be able to choose the manner in which you die. But all of this together, taken in the wrong way, does perhaps lead to instances like the suicide mission to Wano, where all of Ashura Doji's comrades foolishly ran off to their deaths. Yes, they were getting to choose their own death and all that, but to what effect? And this is what we see in Wano. On both sides of the war, Kaido and the samurai, they seem to take things too far in believing that a death for the sake of an honorable death is something one must actively strive for, to the point that your death is literally what defines you. Now we could leave it at that and have a simple message surrounding the idea of death in Wano, but at the same time, it's more complicated. This criticism of honorable deaths is just half the picture. After all, we could just take Usopp's word for it and write the whole idea off. Who needs an honorable death? Who cares? Don't just die for the sake of dying. Yeah, that makes sense, and Usopp is exactly the right type of person to deliver that message. But at the same time, that's not the complete message yet, is it? First of all, let's examine what Usopp is saying here. Is Usopp himself even being honest? Usopp claims that he will cling to life no matter what. He doesn't care if he looks pathetic, he will just find a way to survive, and that's what matters. But that's not entirely true, is it? This speech of Usopp's is coming off the back of this scene that he and Nami had with Ulti, where Usopp urges Nami just to lie and say that Luffy will never become Pirate King. Now, this right here is consistent with Usopp's philosophy that he preaches, that he also later tells the samurai, to just live no matter what. But Oda also clearly writes this Nami scene as a clear callback to a much older scene in Alabasta, a clear reminder of a scene where Usopp was in fact in a similar position to Nami, a situation where Usopp did not in fact follow his own advice that he claims he lives by. An unbeatable enemy was laughing at Luffy's dream. And in this scenario, when it was Usopp whose life was on the line, when the smart thing to do would be to just continue trying to get away, Usopp made it absolutely clear that in this scenario, his own life did not matter. This was a time where he must fight back no matter what. Yes, right before this, Usopp was acting exactly how he says he normally acts. He had decided the enemies were too strong, they were too scary, best to save his own life and live to see another day. He didn't care how pathetic he looked, he was willing to run away. Again, this is the advice he will happily give out to other people. But the reality is that there is a different Usopp underneath this, an Usopp who will, in fact, foolishly throw his life away, who will, in fact, risk everything for stupid reasons like pride, honor, and self-respect. Just as much as Usopp urges the samurai not to throw their lives away unnecessarily, just as he tells Nami not to throw her life away unnecessarily, the reality is that for Usopp himself, his greatest moments throughout the series have always been when he does not listen to his own philosophy. There is no reason for Nami to throw her life away unnecessarily, yet she does. Just as there was no reason for Usopp to throw his life away in Alabasta, yet he did. And on top of that, consider this. Just as much as Usopp's speech is an indictment on the Sunacchi mentality, is the message regarding this Sunacchi way of life as black and white as that, considering how it was first framed? Sunacchi was a phrase that Zoro taught Momonosuke in order to give him courage. We know that it means that one should be willing to throw away their attachment to life and take a courageous risk. That is why Kiku actually tells Momo that he is forbidden from using that phrase. She wants to keep him safe and protect him, the same way that all the scabbards coddle and protect Momo. And of course, we know that this means that the implication is the opposite, that the philosophy of Sunacchi is in fact important for Momonosuke to grow. For so long, Momo has struggled with having to be protected, with being scared and ineffectual. He wants to be able to fight, and his main character growth has been developing that courage to do so. I don't know if we will ever have things come full circle with Momonosuke using the phrase Sunacchi, but at the very least, this is a case where it seems like at the very least, the philosophy is actually not a bad thing for him to learn. On top of that, during Zoro's battle with King, the Sunacchi philosophy was actually framed as important and powerful for a swordsman to have. That is why one of his flashbacks was Zoro learning the phrase, and that's why the way that Zoro is able to defeat King is precisely in line with the idea of Sunacchi. Zoro is risking his life by going all out and recklessly releasing all of his haki. It could kill him, but it is best to throw away that attachment to his own life and take the leap forward. And you might say, well, logically in this scenario, obviously that helped him win the fight, but that's not the point. The point is that Zoro is always ready to die an honorable death rather than backing down, even when he has no chance of winning, even when it is suicidal. But it is precisely because he has this trait that Usopp disparages that Zoro is destined for greatness. So then what does all of this mean? Why are we getting such contradictory messages throughout the Wano arc? Well, at this moment, I personally think it might be coming down to the fact that there is a lot of gray area and nuance to the idea of an honorable death that has been romanticized throughout One Piece so much. After all, this idea of having the resolve to be able to throw away your attachment to life and take a great leap of courage, that is in fact something that many great characters throughout One Piece history have exemplified. That is in fact what makes figures like Luffy or Zoro such larger-than-life spirits, and many characters can learn from taking a page out of their book. However, perhaps in Wano what is being criticized more so is trying to live that way for the sake of living that way. The idea that is being reiterated by questionable sources is that supposedly how you die is essentially who you are. So it's no longer organic, rather you need to be ready to throw away your life and die a great death for the sake of having a great death. And as such, at the moment, I don't think it's as simple as what Usopp says, that it's best to just forget any sense of honor or self-respect and just try to live no matter what, as we have seen the opposite actions put on a pedestal so many times throughout the series, even by Usopp himself. But at the same time, I don't think it's as basic as the samurai seem to think, that they're just supposed to die in battle because that is the honorable way to do things. Now again, all in all, that's just what it looks like to me so far. I do not think that we have the full message just yet. You really cannot have a fully developed thematic message until the arc ends, as this is how themes often develop over a story. First, you introduce certain ideas that seem good, but then you raise counterpoints to challenge those ideas, and then new ideas will develop in response to that, and so on. However, the theme of death, and specifically the honor of death, is very clearly going to become more and more important as the rest of this battle plays out, considering first of all, Kaido's backstory, and the fact that we will likely be finding out the way that he developed this philosophy surrounding death that he has today, but also, of course, the backdrop of the Fire Festival. This whole Onigashima battle is literally taking place on the day of remembering the dead, which strongly suggests that in the final stages of this battle, this theme of death is going to be more important than ever. So if you enjoyed this video, then definitely like, comment, and subscribe.